Hello, everybody who's joined us for the final webinar, I guess, of the year for Base Pair, which is exciting. I don't know how it's Christmas already. And today we are joined by the wonderful Billy Marshall, who has had a big week, but we're very lucky to have here joining us today to talk a bit about bull and heifer selection. Um, it's the format today is going to be a bit casual. It's going to be hopefully a open discussion Q&A style. So please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat for Billy. We're going to make the most of having her here virtually all the way from WA. So please don't be shy with any questions you have. But yeah, otherwise we'll start rolling and we'll see where we get. So I might throw it over to you, Billy, to give us a bit of a introduction to yourself and how Imperial Bovine came about, and we'll roll on from there.
Yeah, cool. Thanks very much, Megan. And thank you very much for having me on. As I just mentioned to you guys earlier, it's been a bit of a hectic morning, but I'm very happy to be here and yeah, very grateful for the opportunity to talk to you guys this morning a little bit about my process in heifer and bull selection. So a bit of background about me. I'm not actually a qualified vet, but I'm an accredited preg tester in WA. I worked for a vet for 3 years, kind of specialising in cattle repro, and then the opportunity came up to actually buy out the business and go out on my own. That was 4 years ago now, and so I created Imperial Bovine, started from scratch, and yeah, we've pretty much been going full time, flat out ever since. Cover most of WA in my clientele base. I've got about 160 clients on the books, which we do mainly preg testing. That's the predominant side of the business, but also getting into AI, semen testing, branding, herd management, and all of those good things that happen in the yard. So, really trying to help knuckle down on clients' productivity and fertility within their herd and working on how we can pretty much improve that to get the best results, because I personally believe that every cow on your property should be pregnant, and they should be able to have a calf and raise a calf every year. And that's my goal. And if they're not doing that, in my mind, they're not a productive animal. So it's really trying to optimize the animals that we have to make sure we're carrying the best animals on farm. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a little bit about me.
absolutely. I'm curious to know, Billy, what kind of operations or what scale of operations? It's quite an area you're covering. Like what scale of operations are you sort of working in?
Yeah, so that's a great map there. So I'm based pretty much on the borderline, just above the wheat belt to the Midwest. So we are based in the Midwest, just south of Geraldton there. Um, Here on farm, my partner and I manage an operation. You can see my background screen is when it's nice and green. During the year, we run 200 head of Angus cattle here. So around that Midwest wheat belt, Great Southern area, we really predominantly see that cow calf operation, early turn off weaners into a domestic market. As soon as you travel north from Geraldton, and I go all the way up into the Pilbara to Port Hedland, that's where you start to see your pastoral country. We have a very dominant drought master and Brahman herd within WA. So a lot of the cattle through there are drought masters, and then further, once you get up into the Kimberley, is the real predominant Brahmin country. And so that's where if you've ever been to the Pilbara, we generally say there's not much other than rocks and spinifex out there. So it's very hard country. It's very hard country to work, but our pastoralists do a really good job of it. And that's where a lot of our export demand cattle come from, out of that Pilbara Gascoyne.
Um, when you're working with your producers, what kind of you mentioned about what obviously you're passionate about what you're doing. What kind of strategies or systems are you taking them through? Like what is how are you helping them, and what sort of information are you I've seen a wonderful presentation that you did at Alice, and I was sort of captivated about all the pieces and the so I was hoping you would unpack that a bit more, your three pillar approach.
Yeah, sure. Like we're all partials, we're all in the industry here. We know how much is going on all of the time. There are so many variables, and that changes operation to operation. what you're trying to produce at the end of the day, your product. And one thing I would have spoken about at Alice is first off establishing your breeding objective. So as a producer, like what are you trying to produce? What is your final product? For us here, it's fast growing Angus steers that are going straight into a feedlot system. It's a little bit different to, yeah, those clients up in the Pilbara that are producing drought master heifers to go on an export boat. So really the first thing is you've got to know what you're trying to achieve, and then we can take a few steps to break down how we actually achieve that goal. And like I said, at the end of the day, my goal on every operation is to make sure every cow is pregnant at the end of the day and going to have a calf and raise a calf. So
Yeah.
a few things, pretty much the first thing we have to do is work out what we're dealing with. So a big thing that I'm trying to encourage producers to do, regardless of where they are, is data management. You have to be recording your cattle. You have to have accurate numbers of your cattle. And that's where the preg testing plays a massive role in that, is we need to know what you establish pretty much a fertility baseline for your herd of how many cows of yours are actually getting pregnant within a set joining period a year. Once we've established that and we know pretty much what we're working with, then we can start to really get down and identify those what are going to be our most productive animals. So in this presentation, I kind of want to unpack or have a look at pretty much the very start of my selection process is our heifer selection and our bull selection. And it's what animals we're actually going to be putting into our herd for future generations. Because if you're not putting your best animals forward in your breeding line, you're eventually going to come unstuck because their progeny is going to flow through, and then you're going to end up, I guess, unfortunately, 5 years down the track, you're going to be stuck with animals that aren't of a high enough quality, or they might carry a fault through, whether it's temperament or bad legs or something like that. And once they're in that herd, it's very hard to get rid of them further on down the track.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a slide here on your approach that I saw you talk about. What is the from your experience over there, what's the kind of current uptake on herd recording that you've seen? Like, do you think it's getting better, or lots of people are cottoning on to like knowing their numbers, or like what's your take there?
It's definitely catching on. It is, I guess, you could almost say a generational barrier. Obviously, our older farmers, technology has taken off, and it's kind of been jump on the bandwagon or get left behind. So I guess in my role, I try to do my best to just expose producers to a range of different products of what they can use from. And we're very fortunate now, we're seeing a lot more options become available in data recording, that you can record as much or as little as you want, whether it's simply just RFID scanning all your cattle and having an electronic recording, or going right through to recording management numbers and coat type and breeding and all of that. So yeah, this is my 3-pillar approach that I use for all of my selection strategies. So there's 3 pillars: phenotype, genotype, and fertility. And I always say most producers are doing one of these really, really well. A good portion of guys are doing 2 of them really well. And it's really just trying to bring everyone up to try to use all 3 pillars as best as we can to influence our herd. Because at the end of the day, the more information we have going forward, the better off we're going to be. So phenotype is all of the observable traits of the animal. And this is what we'll kind of really focus on in this session, because I think it's, dare I say, the most obvious, but it's also the most predominant, and it's easy to get started. And what we really want to do is encourage producers to take the whole team on this journey. When you're selecting heifers, so often I hear in the yards, oh no, that's the manager's job. Or that, no, just the head stocky does that, or the stock agent does that. I think everybody should be exposed to knowing how to structurally assess and visually assess an animal and work out if that is going to have a positive contribution to your herd or potentially a negative one. So in our phenotype, when I refer to observable traits, this is The biggest one is obviously their structural correctness, their growth, their muscle development, their coat type, whether they're horned or polled, and temperament is a big one. Temperament, although it's not a physical thing on the animal, it is an observable trait. So I'll always make sure we include that. Our genetics is our GBVs and EBVs, as you've got there. So that's a lot more your department, Megan, but there's a lot of technology out there that's rapidly evolving how we can better select our animals based off their genetic value. And most guys who are going to a bull sale nowadays, you're going to get a catalogue and it's going to have EBVs in it for the bull. I think what is really important, even if you're not recording your own EBVs, is to understand how EBVs and GBVs are measured and how they're recorded, and then how you actually get that figure. And I see it again very often. Guys go to a bull sale and go, oh, no, we don't want that one because of this one figure, and they don't actually understand the unit that it's measured in, for instance. So I think having a good understanding of that, and Breed Plan online is brilliant. They have a really good explanation for all of their EBVs. And then, of course, you guys, Neogen, they're all willing to help you understand if you want to have a phone call and ask a few questions about, look, we're looking at these animals. These are the numbers in front of us. How do we break it down? How do we understand it? The third pillar is our fertility. And so this comes down to, obviously, heifers is, are they able to get pregnant at a desired age over a certain period of joining time? This is quite tricky in the pastoral industry because most of the time bulls are just out all year round. So you're not really measuring that fertility. Bulls is semen testing and semen motility and morphology. So that's where we really break that down. Measuring fertility in your females, pretty simple, preg test them. So
Even better fetal aging if you can, but
absolutely.
not everyone does, yeah. I've also got another, while you're talking about phenotype, I'm curious to know what do you think, what do you see a lot of? You say people, it's observable traits, but people often can go wrong here. What are they going wrong in that you see? Or what are the most important? Yeah, keen to have your take on that.
I think the biggest one is quantity over quality. And we really need to reverse that mentality that I see a lot of producers go, oh, well, we'll just keep an extra 20 heifers because we're going to get 10 empties anyway, so we'll just get rid of them. Instead of actually keeping the best of your heifers and giving them the best chance to get pregnant and getting those desirable genetics and those desirable traits come through your herd. And I think it's a fear of change that they're going to, and I will say this straight up, anyone who goes from an open breeding program, so especially pastoralists with bulls in all year round, to a controlled joining period, will cull 50% of their heifers in the first year because they will be empty. And I've done a few of these webinars and meetings before, and people go, oh, well, we tried that and we had a really bad rate. We only got 50% of our heifers pregnant. Dare I say it, that's actually an accurate value of the fertility. That is an accurate measurement of the fertility levels of your heifers coming through. Only 50% of them are fertile at 16 months of age. So that can be because of having later maturing genetics, whether it was because of environmental factors, they're a bit light on, all of those things. But that is actually giving you an accurate measurement. So it is hard to, when you start this process and all of a sudden you get a big crop of empties come through and you go, oh my God, we're going to lose half of our heifers or our cows. Those animals that you're retaining that did get pregnant, they are going to carry that fertility through into their progeny and for years to come. And the thing is, with this is it's not just a once-off selection process. It's not just, okay, we're going to select all our keeper heifers and then they're going to remain in the herd until they're 10-year-old cows. you do this process every single year. Every time you look at your cows, that they come through the race and you go, oh, actually, she has bad feet. As a 4-year-old cow, we never noticed it as a heifer, but as she's grown up, her feet have got progressively worse. Color. It's not just she passed the mark once, then she's accepted for life. And the stricter you are on your animals, yes, it will be tougher, but and this is a 3, 4, 5 year process, the quality of the herd baseline will increase rapidly. So a few things like I commonly see is, one, retaining animals just because of lack of numbers instead of quality. And at the end of the day, someone else might have better sale heifers than you do keeper heifers. And that's the thing. So you could actually reduce your numbers quite a bit, but you could buy in a more exceptional line. People will often always invest in their bulls well, and it's great to see. I love going to a good bull sale where prices are high and producers are getting rewarded, but it doesn't mean you can slack off on the heifer side. Just because you bought one good bull at a sale for a top price doesn't mean he's going to fix all of your genetic or faults within your herd by buying one good bull. I like to start my process by what I call stripping them naked. Take the hide off, take all their muscle off, take everything else out, pull them right back to a skeleton. Because at the end of the day, if their skeletal structure is not correct underneath, nothing else on top will matter. Because at the end of the day, if they can't walk and they can't graze, they can't either mount a cow or be mounted by a bull if they are a cow or a heifer, and they can't birth a calf, they are not going to be productive to your herd because they're not able to do their job. At the end of the day, a bull's job is to mount cows and get them pregnant, and a female's job is to get pregnant, birth a calf, and raise it, and then do that again every year.
Absolutely. I'm just going to interject there quickly to remind the audience that you can, in fact, add questions to the chat if you'd like. And we're also going to throw a couple of questions back to you just to break it up a bit. There will be a poll coming up on the screen shortly. If you guys can ask you guys just to answer that for us, then we'll keep rolling on with more questions. And again, post them in the chat if you would like to ask Billi a question.
Yeah, please don't hesitate to throw any comments or questions into the chat by all means. It's better than listening to me talk flat out for the next 40 minutes or so. But yeah, these are a couple of questions I just threw out. I would really like to know where you guys are joining us from and what kind of operation you're running. And in that way, it's just out of curiosity, would love to see where you're coming from and how potentially being on this webinar is going to influence your production at home.
And I personally would be interested to know what your beverage of choice is, and I will be judging you all for it. So wisely.
Do I get to answer these as well?
I actually don't think we have the power to, unless you can, but okay. Have we got any answers coming in?
Yes. Yes, Elsie here. Yes, there are answers coming in if you guys can't see those. We've got a few attendees who only drink coconut water because their bodies are temples, which we love to see. But the winner of beverage of choice is Whitefish Blackfish, so the Great Northerns.
Interesting.
We have, in terms of what kind of businesses we have, we've got seed stock, commercial breeding, and also professional beverage tasting. So I know that was a multiple answer question, so a couple of those might be doing a bit of both. And everyone's out of Queensland. So good representation.
Wonderful.
Any questions in the chat, Big Brother?
No questions in the chat at this stage.
Okay, awesome. So I'll let you continue, Billi. I do have another slide here that also on the confirmation. I didn't realize how little I looked at feet until I saw you present. I guess you just look at symmetry, but yeah, there were things that I was sort of like, I gotta look down more.
It's like I'm very privileged, I think, in my job, as much as I do, yes, spend a day in overalls and plastic gloves, covered in manure. I have an opportunity to see so many animals. And it's really interesting when you watch those animals walk up a race or step into a crush and you step in behind them, the things that you start to notice. So, yeah, this is a really good example. And I will flick through a module that I have put together, or a bit of a booklet for all of you guys attending this afternoon, with some really good diagrams and that in it. Just to look at, I always start at feet because of where we are. We're on quite hard country and our animals have to walk long distances. At the end of the day, like, we're quite gravelly around here. We get quite a bit of rock. And so if our cows don't have a good foot structure, they are instantly going to become lame. They're going to become lame. They're going to fall behind. They're not going to be able to handle bulls jumping them or a big day kind of out working. And unfortunately, I have a very low tolerance for that. So I always start at the ground up, because if their feet are wrong and their legs are wrong, nothing else matters. So I work through, it's a bit of a checklist process. So it doesn't matter if they're the prettiest heifer in the lot. You have to prioritize what traits are most important to you. And for me, definitely feet and legs is a top tier priority. So we want nice sound legs through their hocks, through their pasterns, and a good hoof structure. I'm not sure if we... So I was actually over in Queensland last week, actually, and I did this presentation at in Dalby at Cattle Connect. And it was really interesting, the heifers that we looked at. It's very different from looking at animals standing still to when they actually walk out. So a big bit of advice I will give when you're selecting animals on feet and legs, watch them track, because how they walk, if they walk really short-strided or they maybe paddle their legs, that'll generally be a really good red flag, as I call it, as an indicator that there is a structural fault there. So I always, start at the ground, work my way up. Feet, legs, then you move into your hips. So obviously both bulls and heifers need that correct hip structure. Both of these bulls have a really nice angle of hip, nice and wide. A fun little trick I used to use at the schools all the time is, if you actually measure a cow's head, the length from their poll to their nose is the same distance as hip to hip and their hip to pin. And then the width of the animal's eyes is the same distance as their pin bones. So even if you look at these two bulls here, even though the bull in the top left corner, obviously a very well-rounded, growthy bull, but the bull down the bottom has that slightly more broader, wider head, that gives me an indication that even though we're not standing behind them, the second bull's going to be wider through his pin bones than the bull in the top corner. So, fun little trick. If you generally, especially your heifers, you'll notice your heifers come through and they've got a real kind of long-looking face. Generally means they're going to be narrow the whole way throughout. They're going to be narrow through their shoulders, and then they're going to be narrow through their pins in the back end. So I always look at my shoulders and my hips. Obviously, we want a nice 45-degree angle of the shoulder from the top of his shoulder blade to the point of their shoulder. As we all know, calves come out in a swan dive. So we want their forelegs to be able to extend out nice and flat. Obviously, the broader their shoulders, it's going to potentially pose difficulty calving.
And then once you've selected, I guess, your cattle on that, where do you go to from there?
So after structure or phenotype as a whole? As structure?
Yeah.
So definitely depends on, I guess, your market type. I'm really definitely temperament. I have absolutely no tolerance for bad cows. I don't have time to deal with that in my day. I work full time and then I come home and have to deal with cows here. The last thing I want is cows going over fences, running up a laneway full pelt, hitting the head baler, the crush a million miles an hour, and then trying to climb out over top of it. I think there really is no tolerance for that. And I will say I have refused to work in yards because of cattle temperament and it literally being dangerous for myself to try conduct preg testing or semen testing, things like that. So I definitely am quite strict on temperament. Again, the first year you do it, you'll probably knock your numbers a fair bit, but you will see the positive impact that has on your herd over time. Depending on market specs, obviously horns can be a big one. So for those who don't know, animals that go on a live export boat with horns require 30% more pen space than a polled animal. Even if the horns have been cut, they legally require more pen space if they're horned. So that can pose limitations, especially buying or trading cattle, if that is an interest of buyers, if they prefer polled cattle. If you're into breeding bulls or seed stock, again, producers might not be interested in animals carrying horns. They might be the better animal at the end of the day. They might tick every other box. But as we do like to say, the customer is always right or the consumer is always right. So if producers buying seed stock bulls don't want horns, that's obviously something you can look at implementing through your herd. Overall growth, obviously I like, especially in heifers, my more early maturing heifers. These will be your heifers that start to lay down fat nice and early. They got that nice soft skin, bit of wrinkle over the ribs, a little bit of fat in their tail head. And I'm referring to these as 12 to 15 month old heifers. So pre-joining. I like, if you get a heifer that comes through looking like she's been at the gym all week, she's genuinely going to have a lower fertility rate. If she's not laying down that little bit of fat, that bit of softness, and having that femininity throughout, they're generally going to lack in fertility. As for my, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Billy. We've just got some questions rolling in from the chat.
Yep. No, sorry, I can't see them. So yeah, please.
No, that's all right.
Me.
No, not your job, my job. Do you see more skeletal, including leg and feet problems in southern cattle compared to tropical cattle? From your experience.
That's a really good question. It definitely varies place to place. I probably would say I see it evenly throughout. Some guys in the pasture industry are doing it really well, and they do have the benefit of numbers that they can cull quite hard on those things. They're definitely not doing temperament as well as they probably should. But I definitely do see, and I'll refer to the Angus breeder, like cow-calf unit over here in the West, because it's a very dominant operation at the moment. Pretty much 90% of our domestic cattle in WA, I think, will be Angus, if not already in the next couple of years. It's very market-driven over here. But people have gone that crazy for a black coat, they've forgotten about everything else, because that animal is worth a premium at the end of the day because it's got the Angus brand to it. Unfortunately, that's probably more of a reflection of our market limitations over here. We definitely don't have the sales and the sheer volume that the eastern states probably does. Definitely Queensland and New South Wales. You know, we've probably got 3 large scale abattoirs processing here in WA at the moment. I think I would have passed 5 of them in southern Queensland last week. So that probably drives our limitation a fair bit. I will definitely say there's a lot of corner cutting starting to happen, especially in the seed stock area. I'll personally say I'll never buy a bull or use AI semen for an animal that's had its feet trimmed if I know that it's had its feet trimmed. I do not believe in it. I do not offer that as a service. I never will, because I believe that you should be able to breed cattle with good enough feet that they can survive without getting their feet trimmed. So I think certain trends like that coming in, and that is definitely more southern based, using that I guess, as a leeway to allow bad traits to come into a herd. So I'm sorry, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, well, you basically answered the second one too I had, which was what are the most significant challenges to Western Australian beef businesses? Market access sounds like one of them.
Just being in WA in general. Don't get me wrong, still the best state. And I will say, as I said, like we have a lot of producers doing a really good job over here. Our limitation is definitely probably market access and processing ability and volume, that we are very limited into what we can and can't do. At the end of the day, it is also a good thing because you have to have that better product to get that sale, to get that price. So it is definitely driving people forward a lot more to try have a more premium sort of product at the end of the day. It's very interesting. I was talking to a few guys the other day about cattle in Queensland, and no disrespect to Queenslanders, but I said, we're driving out even to Dolby and you see all these different herds. I said, every animal is a different colour. And it's great that you guys can market that product. If you drive into the Pilbara, every single animal on that station will be red. There's no brindle, there's no white. It's because our market is that strict over here. If a drought master heifer has a bit of a white patch on her head, she doesn't qualify. She doesn't get on that boat. And then it ends up going to the local sale yards and sells at a lesser price. So whereas what I see from over east, there's a lot more leniency for those because you have the sheer volume of numbers going through being processed or being fed, going into feedlots. That's the other thing is, there's, again, probably half a dozen feedlots in WA. And we're trying to cover a very big area and a very big range of cattle. So if you drive if we thinking back to that WA map, from the Pilbara to the Great Southern, you literally, each one of them would be their own country because they are totally different. They're totally different rainfall zones. So in the Midwest, on our place, we have an average 300 mil rainfall zone. My dad and my parents are down in the Great Southern, down near Albany. They have 1,200 mils of rain. So he's running our entire herd in one of his paddocks down there. So it's very different in that scale of things for carrying capacity and production of what our limitations are very environmentally based over here. And majority of WA is a lot harder farming than, pretty much the Southwest or Great Southern.
I have another question for you from the chat. Yep. These are great questions too, by the way. What do you think are the biggest genetic risks you see to Western Australia, northern and southern cattle?
Temperament is definitely one. And so for the southern region, and again, I refer to Angus production, there is so many bulls out there hitting the market that, again, people have jumped on this black coat bandwagon, that has become the biggest priority. When I talk about the tiers of our selection process, all of a sudden, having a black coat became number one. And they forgot about everything else in that process. It was just, it's black, it's an Angus, it must be worth money. So definitely feet is coming through as a risk that I think is going to pretty much get people unstuck. Fertility in that is definitely one for later maturing animals that are lacking that fertility in early joining kind of heifers. I will say this, I never give a heifer a second chance. If she doesn't get pregnant as a heifer, she goes to the feedlot. I don't believe in joining 2.5-year-olds. It's harsh, like, to some people, but, our heifers, we had heifers here, we joined AI'd and then backed up to 2 rounds with a bull. We sat on 96% conception rate. At average 350 kilos joining weight. So I think if you can make those hard calls and eliminate those traits early on, you will definitely see the production come through. I think it's, yeah, again, unfortunately seeing that structural quality drop because of trends is quite disappointing. And it's definitely the feet and leg structure. A lot of people start chasing that early growth and they're actually lacking probably the soundness to become a 10-year-old cow.
So I guess it's all a balancing game by the sound of it.
It is, and there's always going to be things changing, and that's it. We're trying to predict what the market's going to do in 2 years' time or 3 years' time when we're actually selling the progeny that we're joining now. So, we've joined our cattle here, we've preg-tested them, but and we're going, oh, the market's great now. Like, Angus steers are worth $5 a kilo. The steers that we've just conceived, hopefully, they're not going to go to market for another 2.5 years. So it's trying to really forward plan that at the end of the day, regardless of what those market trends do, what the price fluctuation does, what the season does, that even in 3 years' time, I know we're still going to have a quality product going to market. And that's, at the end of the day, that's all we can work for. And it's just really trying to get these foundations and these fundamentals right so that regardless of that little bit of price fluctuation, we're still going to have a saleable product at the end of the day. If you're just skimming through now and your cattle are being sold because, dare I say it, New South Wales is in drought and the WA market's jumped up the ladder, chasing volume and chasing numbers, yeah, you might get a good price for your cattle now, but if that's not a quality product, when the market's flooded with animals, what's going to make the buyers come to you? And that's the way I always think of it. If there was too many cattle in Australia, why would a buyer still come back and buy your product?
So I guess better herd recording too, and puts you in a better position in knowing, like you said at the start, knowing your numbers, knowing what you've got, and ensuring that performing for you can go a long way by the sound of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you, your own opinion, what do you, like, I can't really work it out, but what do you perceive to be a big barrier for adoption for people in terms of recording herd data? Is it feasibility? Is it staff? Is it, I don't know, from what you see, it's such a big area. Like, what is it?
I think it's honestly a lack of education around the operational side of it. People, and this is something I see whether it's up north or, next door, people look at it and go, oh, no, that's too hard. And it's instantly put in the too hard basket. And I think it's because there's a lack of just general, easily accessible education around how to do it. How much does it actually cost? Everyone goes, oh, no, that's too expensive. How would you know? Do you know what it costs? Do you know what a Nils wand costs? Or do you know what a Gallagher or a True Test costs? Do you know what Black Box or Sapien or one of those softwares cost? Because it'll generally surprise you. It's actually a lot cheaper than you think. And I laugh around here, especially based in the Midwest, we're very cropping dominated. Like, we are golden wheat country. If there was a John Deere update, every man and his dog would be at a field day or a ride and drive learning about how that technology that's just come out could benefit their system, could benefit their operation, because they see a value in it. And I think that's where we're going wrong, is we're not showing people, like, yes, don't get me wrong, everything costs money. A Nils one will cost you money, a software program will cost you money. But it's when you can show people that return on investment, that we've preg-tested all the cows, we've scanned them all, we've recorded them, you can go straight back to your office or, your computer that night and work out, righto, this is how many empties we have. You can ring your stock agent, you can ring your truckie, you can go, this is what they were. And then the stock agent goes, oh, yeah, what was their average weight? And, you know, your little green notebook doesn't tell you that. And you go, oh, I don't know. If it's electronically recorded, you can go, yep, no worries, I'll look that up. Here's the average weights. And your stock agent can be like, yep, righto, we'll take everything over 300 kilos. It's having that and eliminating that time of then having to go back and redraft all those cows and put them over the scales again to be able to have that information. That is where you actually save on that investment, is your labor costs, the stress on your animals, the productivity of your animals, and you can really identify those key animals that are going to carry your herd forward. Because a pregnant cow is going to contribute to your herd regardless, whether it's in a good way or a bad way. And I think a big thing that I see is, I guess, again, coming back to that quantity over quality. You have a scrubber cow come through with a big set of horns and a white face and a hairy coat and a horrible udder, and she's pregnant, and they go, oh, but she's pregnant. Or even worse, oh no, she's wet, put her back out. And you put this cow back out and guarantee she will go and get pregnant again and come back. She's contributing animals to your herd that are undesirable.
No, that's brilliant. I've pretty well exhausted all of my questions. I'll give the room 5 minutes to
I think we just got another one on the chat. I've found out how to see them now.
very good. Might be the
You have clients who know how much they produce, live weight they sell, and what limitations are to live weight production. Another great question. Use the testimony today. Yes, I do. I wouldn't say in the pastoral sector much. I'm still trying to get them to count their cows, but definitely down in this region to further south, we're definitely starting to see an uptake, I guess you could say, of really analysing that weight gain and feed management. Definitely, obviously, with the sustainability word being thrown at us left, right, and centre, it has come to attention that guys or girls, producers in general, need to be better managing their pastures and how that contributes to their herds. I think that, as in limitations to live weight production, I definitely think the biggest one in that area is feed management. We definitely still have a lot of kind of open grazing down here. The cows are in one paddock all year, or even, dare I say, in our cropping area here, the cows are kind of starved for 9 months of the year while a crop grows, and then after they're harvested, they go out on stubble. So you definitely probably see poorer management in those mixed operations because the cattle's not their primary income. In the pastoral areas or up north, the weaners are the only thing they're making money off. You know, they're not harvesting a crop, they're not making hay, they're not selling sheep or things like that. So I think, yeah, it's a slow uptake, but yeah, it would definitely, I think with the faster uptake of data recording, I would really like to see producers start to record this information a lot more. But definitely in the sense of like ways and things like that, it's definitely a slow uptake in WA in that regard. What percentage of clients are asking for fetal age more than just a pregnant empty? For down here, a lot of producers who do pretty much any AI or fixed time reproduction, we will fetal age for. So we fetal age our AI conception to our backup bull conception. So anyone who's pretty much using AI or an embryo resit program, I'll fetal age for. Pastoralists, a lot we do in trimesters. So it's not an individual kind of, this one's 12 weeks, that one's 16 weeks. You know, it's more first trimester, second trimester, third. And that gives them the opportunity to better manage those animals, especially if they're culled cows or saleed cattle, or preferably sale cattle. Heifers, we can fetal age so they can be marketed slightly better. So we can give pretty much potential buyers an indication of when those calves are going to drop if they're outside a desired joining window. So majority of my pastoralists will all fetal age to a trimester, but not necessarily a specific narrowed down age or date, if that makes sense.
Cool. Any more questions coming through? Or Billi, is there anything else you would like to add or touch on that we haven't asked yet?
No, I don't think so. I think it's been really good. Thank you so much for the questions, guys. You definitely put me on the spot with some of them. So, no, look, I guess like I would like to know, even in the chat, how do you guys see like data uptake in your area? Like, is it something you're doing on farm yourself? Is it something that, yeah, I guess, do you agree with my statement that I think education, like it's lacking in education around the subject of data management? And I guess as someone involved in industry, and I'd be more than happy to talk to any one of you after this event. I'll get Megan and Elsie to pass on my details following the webinar. But yeah, I guess something that I've personally done is we hosted a field day here on farm this year for the first time, and don't get me wrong, it was a challenge. It was quite tricky, but we had 70 producers come on farm, and we actually semen tested a couple of bulls as a demonstration, and then had a series of presentations throughout the day similar to this. And it just blew me away how many people attended for just a small on-farm field day, but two, got something out of it. And I personally will say, like, we are definitely going to do it next year, and I think this data intake is going to be something we're going to cover. But yeah, I would just like to know any feedback from you guys watching, like potentially do you agree with maybe if that education is a limitation on data uptake, or are there other things that you're seeing in your area that, or even in your own system, might be the reason why you don't do it? If you don't, as to why is data management so slow to catch on?
See if anyone responds. It's always tricky with in a webinar setting, but we'll definitely be passing Billi's details around. But I think there's some.
The other option is if attendees just put their hand up and I can allow you to talk rather than typing out a 3-paragraph answer.
Cool.
Okay. No hands up?
Nope.
It's all right. We've got a quiet audience.
No, thank you very much. Did you have any other questions for me, Megan, before we close up?
Sorry, we did have a hand up.
We've got a hand up.
Sorry, Jeffrey, I just muted you again.
He wouldn't. Still muted.
Righto. Does that work?
Yeah.
Yes,
I'm with you. G'day.
G'day, Jeffrey. How's it going?
Bloody good. Billi, thanks for all that. That's interesting. Just to comment back to you about data. I think the biggest problem with data is our entry points generally incorrect.
Yep.
A lot of the time people are going in with toys like, the TWR5 or whatever, and collecting all sorts of amazing information and then go, crikey, what are we going to do with this? And generally it just gets put in a cupboard or stuck on a disk and never used, or really underutilized. And the reason is that they don't truly understand what's under the bonnet of their own business. So they don't understand, even though the data can inform them, they haven't actually done a situation analysis from a biological point of view. How many kilograms of pasture do they produce? How many kilograms of live weight do they produce? How efficiently do they do that, and at what cost? So they're pretty critical elements. The most interesting, the most valuable piece of data, and you touched on this earlier, that I reckon people record, is the presence of an animal. So just being able to do an annual stock take annually is probably the most important data you can collect. So that means linking your NLIS tag to a year number and a sex. If a tag falls out, you just replace it and with an animal of the same year number and sex, so you don't miscount mortalities. But if you've got that data, you've got extraordinarily powerful analytical information if you couple that with transactions and some understanding of live weights of your cattle. It's that key thing. The second most important piece of data, other than just sex and age, is actually lactation status. So the tendency is to score interesting things like fetal age and live weight and body condition, which are all very useful, but they're not as useful as lactation status. And the reason lactation status is so valuable is that it can be used to define calf rearing ability, which is the ability to wean a calf is the end point of reproduction. And as you said, they're not worth a lot unless they do wean a lot of weight. And you can't really work that out unless you have lactation status. It's the best. It predicts more of the variation in live weight production of a business than any other measurement. And why? And quite often it is actually not even collected. It's sort of thought of as a secondary trait when it's actually the number one trait. So probably the third thing that's really important is that people get this data and then they try and analyze it themselves. When in fact, it's actually quite a skilled exercise. So you need some analytical powers. Like if you're not very capable with a spreadsheet and a fair bit of mathematics, you actually need to contract someone who can actually work that numbers to work it out for you. It can be quite complex, and you need to subcontract. So trying to do this by yourself, you can carefully work out a pile of hogwash. So there's a whole background of why our data entry point of buying a toy and then going crush side and recording what appears to be useful data and why it ends up being quite often quite useless because it doesn't actually, we're not using it to create a situation analysis which defines our problems and our opportunities, which then make it very clear what our solutions might be, whether they're the feed base, whether they're lactation management, whether they're feed and stress, or whether they're genetics or bull breeding. They're the key things that we can alter. But it's because of these fundamental issues that we're entering at the wrong point. That's my general take on it, Billi.
No, thank you very much for that, Jerry. And I think it's a very valid observation. I've definitely seen it a lot. Like you said, people do get this idea. They go, oh yeah, we're gonna. If they do go out and purchase a system, and then they go, yeah, we're going to record absolutely everything, and 90% of it becomes useless, or it's never looked at again. So I definitely give credit to that statement there. And like I've been to I remember I went to a property once. And I went to go try find a charging cord for the panel reader. And I walked into a storeroom and they had a panel reader and unit of every single brand shoved in this storeroom. And I went, what the hell's all this? And they said, oh, no, that was the last manager's setup. And every time they had a new manager, the manager went in and, oh, no, we only use Gallagher, or we only use this, or we only use that. And it just made me think of all the data that's been recorded on those other systems, and they're here trying to start again every second year. I think in saying that as well, staff turnover is a very big one. That if you don't have a consistency, obviously if it's your own operation, it's a little different. Hopefully you're not leaving it anytime soon. But definitely in the pastoral industry, we have quite a high staff turnover. So you might get someone who comes in, gets a bit of an idea how to run the system, starts data recording, they finish that season and leave, and then, again, that data's put aside. I definitely think, and that's I guess, yeah, coming back to my education piece, there needs to be more help, I think, out there from these companies offering this software and these systems as to, one, what to record, how to record it, but then also how to analyze it as well. And I think it's very much, at the moment, I see it, it's sell them a product, sell them a toy or a gadget, and then that's it. The transaction's closed. There's no follow-up help. I know we don't even have service providers in WA. If your TW5 breaks down, you've got to call someone in Victoria. So you add a 3-hour time difference onto your day, that instantly becomes harder. And I think that's where a lot of this information is getting lost. So I think people, yeah, you're definitely right in the fact that once people do get a system, they kind of go all crazy about it, but don't actually use that information to their best ability. And I definitely think, yeah, we need to be doing more as an industry, and especially those selling the products and offering the products, to follow up the second stage of not just getting the system, but actually how to collect the data correctly. And I will always say the only thing worse than no data is incorrect data. Because if you have a default set as sex as steers and you run 500 heifer calves through on that day of marking, and all of a sudden you get home and go, yeah, we're going to be rubbing our hands together, we've got 2,000 steers on the ground, and you've actually only got 1,000, it just becomes pointless. And again, it's a lot of work for no result.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Billi. We are coming up to time now, so I will crack us off if there are no other pressing questions in the next couple of minutes. But I just wanted to say thank you, Billi, for jumping on today. I know it's been a big week. And thank you everyone else who came on. It's a crazy end of the year. Christmas will be here before we know it. But yeah, as we said, we'll be sending Billi's details around, and you'll receive a recording of the webinar as well. So just want to, yeah, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. My details are on the screen there, so if you have any questions or, yeah, want to have a follow-up chat, please, by all means, give me a call, flick me an email. I'd be more than happy to chat with anyone about what we've discussed today.